The Great Migration, which took place from 1916 to 1970, was a movement of over 6 million African Americans from the South to the urban North. It was one of the largest movements in the U.S. history. The Great Migration consisted of two waves. The first wave lasted from 1916 to 1930. The second wave took place from 1940 to 1970. During the first wave, the Pennsylvania Railroad helped over 10,000 African Americans move to the North. From 1960 to 1930, the population in the North greatly increased, and the growing population created strong communities. In the second wave, more people migrated to coastal cities in California, Oregon, and Washington. In 1930, there were a little over 50,000 African Americans living in California's largest cities. By 1950, that number increased to more than 250,000.
Causes for the mass movement were to avoid racial violence, pursue economic opportunities in addition to education opportunities, and win independence from the Jim Crow oppression. Jim Crow oppression was about a law that legalized racial segregation. In addition to these issues, employment was a push and pull factor at the time. The North was faced with a labor shortage that formed because it heavily relied on Europe's cheap labor immigrants. When World War I emerged, immigration from Europe ceased, causing a pause in the cheap employee opportunities. In search of another solution to continue economic growth, the North turned to African Americans.
Before the migration, African Americans made up 2% of Chicago's population. By 1970, about 33% of Chicago's population was African American. Major northern cities saw a significant percent increase in the black population between 1910 and 1920. Most African Americans who left the South were poor black men. They put their lives in danger while leaving their families behind to try to obtain a better future. Women and kids often stayed until the men could find a stable source of income. The South placed restrictions on people attempting to leave through the use of arrest. If this tactic failed, the police or other higher personnel would ask trains and other forms of transportation to keep moving. Most people in the Great Migration traveled along three major streams. The streams were the East Coast Stream, the Midwest Stream, and the West Coast Stream.
Literature and scholarship grew as a result of the Great Migration. Housing issues led to many black residents building their own communities within large cities, which encouraged the development of a fresh, urban black culture. The Harlem Renaissance emerged around the 1920s in New York. Many artists and writers, such as Langston Hughes, Zora Neale, and Duke Ellington, began gaining more recognition after migrating to the North. People like Michael Jackson and Florence Mills were a part of these successful creators.
The Great Migration was one of the most extensive movements of people in the United States history. This was the beginning of a new age of growing political activism among Black Americans. People who participated in this movement experienced a lot of discrimination during their journey to the urban North from the South. The Great Migration represented a significant frontier in the United States history.